They outlawed us like we were a virus. Not with a war, not with a bang, but with a damn vote. I was sitting in the rusted-out belly of a junk freighter orbiting dead space when the transmission came through. The words echoed through every frequency like a final verdict. By unanimous decree, the Galactic Council hereby designates Homo sapiens as a Class 9 exile species. All human presence within Council territories is punishable by erasure. Just like that, humanity ceased to exist on the official star charts. No debate, no trial, no last word. But here's the thing about outlawing humans. You can't outlaw rage. You can't exile memory. You damn sure can't erase men like me. Name's Cole. Used to be Commander Cole Riker, Terran Fleet. Now, just another outlaw drifting among scavengers and ghosts. Except I wasn't drifting anymore. That message lit a fire in my gut that had been burning low for years. They thought we were broken, scattered, extinct. But all they did was wake the last wolves. See, the Council didn't ban us because we were dangerous. They banned us because we stopped playing nice. After the collapse back on Earth, after the nations burned and AI betrayed us, after the rich fled to their orbital kingdoms and the poor drowned in ash, humans didn't die off. We evolved, hardened. We stopped trusting hope. And when the aliens came offering peace, we took their hand with one and built weapons with the other. The Council thought they were integrating us, educating us. What they were really doing was giving wolves the keys to the henhouse. For a century, we studied them. Every weakness, every law, every species' fragile morality. We learned their tech, their tactics, their limits, and we never forgot who we were. That vote to outlaw humans? It came after a little incident on the mining moon of Hallex 9. A human crew, mercs mostly, refused to evacuate during a plasma storm. Not because they were stubborn, but because a Zarn diplomat's child was trapped in the ore tunnels. The aliens abandoned their own. The humans didn't. 3 died pulling that kid out. One of them, Captain Mason Thorne, transmitted a simple line before the storm took him. "This is what humanity means, you bastards." The Council couldn't let that go viral. Couldn't let their citizens start comparing their spineless order to a dying race of war-born apes. So they declared us outlaws. Not because we were a threat to the universe, but because we were a threat to their control. Back on the freighter, I watched the message repeat in 12 different alien dialects. I laughed. Honest to God, I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because they thought that message was the end. It wasn't. It was the beginning. I keyed into the secure channel, the old one they thought we'd abandoned. Static hissed. Then came the voices. Gravel, rage, loyalty. Human voices. Mercenaries, traitors, warlords, scavengers. We hadn't spoken in years, not since the Black Treaty, but the silence broke with one shared instinct. "They outlawed us," I said. "And now?" asked a voice I hadn't heard in a decade, Juno, my old tactical officer. "Now we remind them what that means." The broadcast didn't reach every human, but it didn't need to. It reached the right ones. We weren't connected by command anymore. No flags, no ranks, no polished boots and brass medallions. That kind of order died with Earth. What we had now was something older, rawer, packs of survivors, fire-forged loyalty, and grudges that spanned stars. Within hours of the Council's vote, the old channel was alive again. Not officially. We never left traces like the other species did. But there were signals. Broken fragments of English hidden inside automated cargo logs, subtle pattern shifts in drone movement, orbital beacons blinking in Morse. Humans were talking again, and not one of them sounded ready to surrender. I rerouted the freighter's course to Vega Drift, the last known human-controlled station outside Council jurisdiction. At least, the last one still standing. The Council liked to send cleansing patrols to these outposts. Drones, mostly, or merc teams from species that hated humans just enough to be cheap. But Vega Drift was different. It had guns. Big ones. It sat like a rusted dagger just outside the exclusion zone, orbiting a dead moon that once held a Terran research base. Every surface of Vega was scorched, dented, leaking, or patched together with salvaged hull plating. But it lived. And more importantly, it remembered. Juno was already there when I docked. I hadn't seen her in 12 years. She still wore that same ragged flight jacket, patched with old insignias from a fleet that no longer existed. Her eyes were harder now, like polished stone. "You heard," I said as I stepped onto the docking ring. She didn't nod, didn't blink. I heard. "What do we have left?" Her jaw tightened. "More than they think. Less than we need." We sat in the command room, bare steel, low power, red lighting. The table between us was scratched with names. Hundreds. Fallen crews, rogue captains, dead friends. I added one more with the edge of my knife. Mason Thorne. Juno sighed, eyes locked on the console screen. "There's word from Centauri ruins. 2 old Earth warships are still functional, docked in a forgotten yard. Shield tech's unstable, but guns work." I raised an eyebrow. "Which models?" "The Krakens," I whistled. "Those were banned by the Geneva Protocols, anti-capital weapons. A single broadside can rip a city ship in half." She leaned forward. "Exactly why we need them." We both stared at the display as it loaded a map of the Council's core systems. Dozens of dots blinked, each a planet that outlawed our kind, each a silent dare. Around the edges of the map, thin red rings marked hostile human zones. They called them that to justify attacks, to spin extermination as diplomacy. "They erased us from the law," Juno muttered, "but they forgot something." "What's that?" She met my eyes. "We were illegal before. We just got better at it." The first step wasn't war. It was memory. We had to remind the galaxy what humans were. Juno and I reached out to old contacts, black market traders, forgotten captains, even a few hybrid species who owed us. We didn't beg. We offered them a chance, a cause, something more than this slow rot of council peace. I took a trip to the Necra fields, where exiled human prisoners were dumped decades ago. No transport, no tech, just a planet wrapped in storms and carnivorous fog. Council policy said it was non-lethal relocation. They lied. I landed in the middle of a shantytown of survivors, men and women with scars instead of faces, armed with makeshift weapons, speaking in clipped Terran dialects. They hadn't forgotten who they were, and when I told them what the Council had done, they didn't hesitate. "We're already dead to the stars," one of them growled. "Might as well haunt the bastards." Word spread fast. Human convoys started appearing in the shadow lanes, hiding behind asteroid belts and forgotten jump gates. They weren't fleets, not yet, just fragments. Old warships stripped for speed, freighters reworked into missile boats, fighter wings flown by veterans with nothing left to lose. But they were coming. 3 weeks after the ban, the Council held a summit on Elix Prime to celebrate unity. The galaxy's media covered it like a festival. Peace flags, holographic light shows, speeches about progress and balance. Then someone hacked the broadcast. The screens flickered, a static burst cut through the music, and Mason Thorne's voice echoed across 1,000 worlds. "This is what humanity means, you bastards." The screen showed his final transmission, raw, unfiltered, blood-soaked. It showed his men digging through plasma storms to save an alien child who wasn't even their own species. It showed the ship melting behind them. It showed Thorne's face as the storm swallowed him whole. Then came the message. Not from Earth, from us. You outlawed us. You made us ghosts. But ghosts don't die. They hunt. And with that, the screen cut to black. The council's response was predictable. Panic wrapped in arrogance. They issued arrest warrants for anyone suspected of aiding humans, imposed scans at every major port, launched more patrols to cleanse human sympathizers. But they were too late. By the time they realized the infection had spread, it was in their bloodstream. A week later, a council dreadnought exploded over the neutral zone near Hallex 9, not by fleet assault, by sabotage. A human tech had infiltrated the crew 6 months earlier, one button press and 40,000 tons of alien steel turned into fireworks. The galaxy tried to pretend it was a one-off, an anomaly. Then a council trade convoy vanished near the Black Reach. Then a Zarn diplomat's shuttle was found adrift, hull painted with human graffiti. You created us, now deal with us. We weren't trying to win battles. We were making them bleed confidence. Juno stood beside me on Vega Drift's observation deck, watching the stars shift in real time. The station pulsed with energy now, ships docking, engineers upgrading weapons, soldiers training. The ghosts were waking up. You think they'll fight back hard? She asked. I nodded. They'll panic. They'll call us terrorists. We are, I smirked. That's the point. She looked at me then, really looked. And if we lose? I didn't flinch. We already lost Earth. We already lost our name. What's left is rage. And rage doesn't need a home. Juno didn't smile. She just turned back to the stars. Then let's show them what it means to exile wolves. Vega Drift was alive, like it hadn't been in years. You could feel it in the metal under your boots. Like the station itself remembered it was once built for war. Men who hadn't seen each other since the fall of Terra shook hands over weapon crates. Old grudges were buried under newer, sharper ones. There were no politicians here, no peacekeepers, just outlaws with haunted eyes and calloused hands. We didn't need an army. We needed a storm. And that storm started with a man named Brax. He wasn't military, never had been. Brax was one of those war-born kids, raised in the orbital slums during the food riots. First time he killed a man, he was 12. First time he flew a fighter, he was 13. First time he built his own fleet, he was 15. He didn't believe in flags or alliances, but he believed in payback. I found him on the remains of the Cinder Ring, an old asteroid refinery turned black market hub. It was half-floating debris now, courtesy of a cleansing patrol a year back. Brax didn't flinch when I told him what the council did. He just cracked his knuckles and said, "Took 'em long enough." Then he handed me a chip. "Coordinates. It's a council convoy route. Low guard, high value, hit it hard, hit it loud." Juno and I gathered what we had. Not a fleet, just 3 ships. A retrofitted war frigate, an old mining barge with torpedo racks, and my freighter, now armored like a damn bull. We called it Operation Echo. The goal wasn't resources, it wasn't victory, it was fear. The convoy appeared right where Brax said it would. 3 transports, 2 light escorts, a council supply run heading for the inner systems, loaded with rare plasma cores and medical synth. We didn't use cloaks, we didn't jam signals, we made sure they saw us coming. The first blast came from Juno's ship, the Dead Sun. A plasma cannon strike ripped through the lead escort, cutting it clean in half. The second ship turned to respond, but Brax's barge was already dropping mines like confetti. I took the center. The freighter slammed into the side of the largest transport, claw arms tearing through hull like it was foil. My team boarded fast. No speeches, no negotiations. We didn't kill everyone, just the command crew. Then we broadcast, live, raw, bloody. Council systems couldn't block it fast enough. The galaxy watched as outlawed humans took over a council convoy with precision and hate. We didn't rant. We didn't posture. We just stood over the dead and said one thing: "This is what you created." Back on Vega Drift, the atmosphere changed. You could feel it, like static before a storm. The strike wasn't just a win, it was proof. Proof that humans weren't broken, scattered, extinct. We were angry. The Council's response came 3 days later. They sent a siege cruiser, one of their heavy hitters, to cleanse Vega Drift once and for all. Standard Council tactic: make an example, call it peace. But this time, we were ready. The CNS Quarax entered orbit with all the arrogance you'd expect. Shields up, comms demanding immediate surrender. They didn't know what we'd hidden in the debris field. Brax's team had been working for weeks, salvaging old Terran coil cannons, retrofitting scrap into guided kinetic weapons. The second the Quarax hit position, we detonated. 4 kinetic slugs, each moving at 20,000 meters per second, struck the underside of the cruiser. The hull buckled. The engines died. It didn't explode. It just stopped. And that was worse. We boarded her, took the bridge, held every officer in chains. We didn't kill them. We filmed them, stripped of rank, bound, powerless, and then we let them walk, on foot, through Vega's lower levels, past every starving child, every wounded soldier, every ragged human survivor. The message was clear. You outlawed us, but you didn't break us. The Council went quiet after that, not out of fear, out of calculation. They started using proxies, hiring mercenaries from the more vicious species, promising credits, ships, territory for every human skull delivered. Didn't matter. We weren't just fighting back. We were infecting the system. Planet by planet, station by station, human ghosts started appearing. Some sabotaged Council tech. Others hijacked cargo routes. A few just showed up, whispered stories, and disappeared. Fear did more damage than guns ever could. Meanwhile, Juno was organizing the next step. Not just attacks, not just revenge, structure. She started building what she called the network. Cells of humans and sympathizers scattered across the stars. Not a fleet, not a government, a movement. Each cell had 3 goals: survive, strike, spread the truth. No leaders, no weaknesses. By the time the Council realized what was happening, half their infrastructure relied on systems secretly built by human techs. Their comms, their food processing, their security bots. And we were in them all. I remember one day watching a Council ambassador's speech on interstellar unity, knowing full well that the holoprojector was hijacked to send back every word to our base. He thought he was preaching order. We were laughing. But it wasn't all glory. War never is. Brax's second-in-command, Geller, got hit during a skirmish near the Andari Arc. A sniper from a Merc team vaporized half his skull mid-command. We buried him in space. No speeches, just silence and stars. Losses mounted. Council pressure intensified. Rewards on our heads grew into 6 figures. Juno got wounded during a boarding op. Took shrapnel to the ribs. She didn't even scream. Just stitched herself shut and kept giving orders. Some days we barely ate. Some days we barely slept. But not once, not one damn time, did anyone say, "Let's stop." Because you don't stop when you're hunted. You become the better predator. By the 2nd month, rumors began spreading in Council worlds. Whispers of a human fleet growing in the ghost sectors. Of ships that weren't on any registry, armed with weapons no one could trace. Of a voice, our voice, hijacking Council broadcasts to tell the real stories. The massacres, the betrayals, the prisons, the ban. We didn't scream for justice. We spoke truth like knives, and truth cuts deeper than any laser. Juno pulled me aside one night, her hand still bloodied from patching up a wounded fighter. "They're scared," she said. I nodded. "They should be." She shook her head. "Not scared of us. Scared of what we represent." I frowned. And what's that? She looked me dead in the eye. The reminder that their peace is built on silence, and we're done being quiet. It started on Varaxis. Not a strategic planet. No military bases. No weapons caches. Just a council-affiliated terraformed colony full of diplomats, teachers, families. The kind of place that told the rest of the galaxy, look how peaceful our order is. But Varaxis was also home to Echo Hall, the largest data vault outside the Council core. Archives of history, genetic logs, censored footage. They used it to scrub truth, twist the narrative, and rewrite the past. Juno called it their lie machine, and we were going to shut it down. We didn't need an army. We needed timing, precision, and a crew with nothing left to lose. That crew was mine. The plan was simple, suicidal, and perfect. I'd go in as a captured smuggler, council disguise, false ID, rigged bio sign. Juno and 2 others would infiltrate the lower power grids while Brax coordinated a blackout from orbit. During the 30-second darkness window, we'd breach the vault, copy the data, and rig the core to burn. We weren't just going to steal the truth. We were going to make it scream. They processed me through security like any other criminal. Shackled, scanned again. A Zarn warden sneered as he shoved me into holding. "You people never learn," he said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. In 30 minutes, the power would drop, and his job title would shift from warden to Ash. Down in maintenance, Juno's team worked in silence. No chatter, no errors. Every motion practiced 1,000 times. She tapped into the power conduits, rerouted cooling systems, and planted the burn chip with the precision of a surgeon. Meanwhile, Brax's team floated in orbit, hiding behind the planet's moon in a shield-dampened freighter. He watched the clock like a predator waiting for a heartbeat to slow. We were ghosts in their system, and they never saw us coming. At 0400 hours, the lights went out. Varaxis dropped into blackout for exactly 33 seconds. In those seconds, we broke into Echo Hall like it was paper. Security doors failed open, internal comms crashed, emergency systems looped ancient logs. We sprinted past corridors of silence, past rows of screens where humanity's history had been scrubbed clean, wars rebranded as riots, massacres hidden under resettlement events. It was all there, buried, waiting. Juno's voice came through the static. "Upload is live. 10%. 20. I held position by the vault, weapon drawn. The air tasted like burnt ozone, the kind that hangs before the lightning hits. Then it happened. A child's face on the screen. Black eyes, scarred lips, dirty, forgotten. The caption: Human settler, redacted colony 27, re-education subject. It hit me like a fist. I knew that face. It was my brother. He died on that colony. I'd buried his name, buried the memory, but the council didn't bury it. They used it. They filed it under non-cooperative juveniles. My grip tightened on the weapon. I nearly pulled the trigger on the screen itself. Juno's voice returned. 80%. Hold, Cole. Almost there. The lights flickered. The council's response teams were waking up. Outside, sirens blared. Inside, I stared at a screen and felt something inside me die again. When the power returned, we were gone. The data? Broadcasted through 1,000 shadow nodes. Every screen on Varaxis lit up with council lies, side by side with the raw footage, the real deaths, the screams they had buried under bureaucracy and polished speeches. From orbital stations to civilian homes, everyone watched as their utopia bled truth. And we didn't hide our faces. That was Juno's call. She said, "Let them see we're not monsters in the dark. We're the children of the truth they tried to kill." And when people saw us, scarred, furious, alive, they didn't see terrorists. They saw themselves. The council lost more than a data vault that day. They lost control of the story, and in a world built on narrative that's death, protests erupted in neutral colonies. Non-human species began demanding audits, opening old records, asking questions they'd buried for decades. One by one, council allies fell silent, not out of loyalty, but fear. Because if the humans had this much proof, how much more was still hidden? The council called us radicals, but behind closed doors, they used a different word. Reckoning. 2 weeks later, Juno got word from a merchant ship near the Pytherian fringe. A defector, council intelligence officer, wanted extraction in exchange for proof of a Project Silence. Sounded like bait, smelled like bait. But we couldn't ignore it. I went myself. Solo. The meet was in an old salvage yard orbiting a decayed moon. No backup, no support. Just me, a pulse rifle, and a gut full of fury. He was waiting. Pale. Thin. Nervous. Name was Varn. Half Silac, half council breed. He didn't talk like a bureaucrat. He talked like a man with nightmares. He handed me a chip. Said nothing. I scanned it. It showed mass graves, human, council-marked ships, coordinates in council space, and one more thing, audio logs of council officials discussing final clearance. I looked at him. "Why give this to me?" He answered in a whisper. "Because my daughter was born with human DNA. They said she's contaminated." I didn't need to ask what happened next. His eyes said enough. I didn't kill him. He didn't ask me to. We returned to Vega Drift with the chip. Played it for every soul in the station. The room fell quiet. Men who had killed without hesitation stood frozen. Even Brax didn't curse. Juno's voice shook when she spoke. They weren't just erasing us. They were testing extinction. That's when it became more than vengeance. It became war, not just against the council, against the silence itself. I stood before the largest gathering of human survivors since the collapse. Mercs, traders, engineers, kids. Some had never known Earth. Some still wore the soil under their nails. I told them the truth. I showed them the graves. I showed them what the council did in secret labs. And then I asked one question. "Are you going to die quiet?" The roar that answered shook the walls. We weren't ghosts anymore. We were fire. And the galaxy was about to burn. The council should have silenced the defector the second he opened his mouth. But they didn't. And in that hesitation, everything unraveled. The chip Varn gave us, those coordinates, those bodies, those sterilization protocols, didn't just expose a policy. They exposed a pattern. They proved something we'd suspected for decades. The council wasn't afraid of what humanity had done. They were afraid of what we could do, of how quickly we adapted, how violently we survived, how ruthlessly we remembered. And now, the rest of the galaxy started wondering. If humans were outlawed for being dangerous, what else had the council buried? Vega Drift became more than a hideout. It became a symbol. Ships that once ran from council space started changing course toward it. A Zarn engineer showed up in a shuttle built for one, carrying only a case of council data cores. Said nothing when he landed, just handed the cores to Juno and collapsed. Inside the cores, genetic modification records, dozens of species, hundreds of unauthorized trials, human and non-human subjects, most marked disposed. It was never just about us. We'd been the first target, not the only one. The network's reach tripled within a week. Council drones began glitching mid-patrol. Communication relays started broadcasting distorted human messages. Pro-council colonies lost control of power grids. Their worlds didn't go dark. They went red. We were everywhere now. The ghosts they thought they erased had taught themselves to haunt every wire, every code base, every backdoor system. We didn't ask for entry anymore. We took it. But the council didn't collapse like a dying star. It twisted inward. They launched propaganda waves, calling the defector chip a forgery, blaming human sympathizers for destabilizing galactic harmony. They tried to spin the truth like a weapon, and for a moment it almost worked. Fear is a powerful thing, especially when you've built your rule on it. Some systems shut their borders, refused human entry, imposed scan and purge orders on refugee crafts. One of those was Ryloth Prime. Ryloth was a neutral zone, officially, but when a human medical convoy carrying children tried to dock for repairs, they were denied. Not once, 4 times, in distress, with life support failing. By the time we arrived, the ship was just orbiting wreckage. Juno stood on the bridge, face pale. "These weren't soldiers," she whispered. "No," I said. "That's why they did it." We retrieved what we could: DNA samples, black box logs, and a name etched into the hull in scorched metal. We were not the enemy. The retaliation was immediate. Brax led it. He didn't ask permission. He didn't warn anyone. He took a strike team and firebombed the Ryloth primary docking tower with salvaged plasma mines. 800 council diplomats were vaporized. Collateral damage? Sure. Guilt? Maybe. But to Brax, to many of us, it wasn't murder. It was balance. Juno hated it. "This makes us what they say we are." "No," I said. "This makes us honest. They write their sins in treaties. We write ours in blood." We didn't celebrate the strike, but we didn't apologize either. The time for apologies ended the day they outlawed our existence. The fallout from Ryloth split the galaxy down the spine. Some species condemned us publicly, but opened private channels offering supplies, safe harbors, even intelligence. Others demanded all-out eradication. The Zayari proposed system-wide human detection protocols, a polite way of saying genocide, clean and bureaucratic. But for every enemy that rose, another ally cracked through the Council's mask. One was a Valdari captain named Solace. His ship defected mid-patrol, cut comms, turned off beacons, and transmitted a single message to our network. They lied. You were never the threat. You were the warning. We let him in. Not out of trust, out of strategy. Solace brought us codes, patrol schedules, weak points in the Corps' inner defense ring, and something else, a map, a classified star chart, one the Council hadn't published in over a century. It showed a system marked in red. Delta Nix, a dead zone, off limits. Solace said it was where Project Silence was perfected, the place where they learned how to erase humans, the place where they tested extermination. We had to go. Juno wanted a scout mission. Small, quiet, recon only. Brax wanted to go in guns blazing. I wanted answers, so I chose the middle path. We sent a crew of 6, including me, on a fast, shielded runner. No flags, no heat trail, stealthed from nose to engines. Delta Nix wasn't empty. It was alive. Black satellites spun silently above a broken world. No signals, no broadcasts, just silence. The surface was cracked, scorched, like a planet scorched from the inside out. But the satellites weren't weapons. They were recorders, orbiting eyes capturing data. When we cracked into one, we found the footage. Not from today, from decades ago. Thousands of humans, men, women, children, lined up in jumpsuits. They weren't prisoners. They weren't rebels. They were subjects. We watched them walk into domes. We watched the domes shut. We watched fire rain from above, and we watched Council scientists take notes. We didn't speak for a long time, not even Brax, just silence. Then Juno said, "Burn the orbit." I nodded. We planted charges, targeted every recorder, every satellite, and when we left that system, we left it in flames. But we kept the footage, because silence didn't protect them anymore. It condemned them. The final straw came days later. A council official, Drac Valeris, resigned on live galactic broadcast. one of their architects, a voice for their order. He cried on screen, begged forgiveness, admitted everything, the bans, the experiments, the Council's fear, their long-term plan for species sanitation. He said humans weren't erased for being monsters. They were erased for surviving what the Council couldn't understand. We never fit their mold. We never obeyed their decay. We endured. The Council ordered his death within the hour. But it was too late. The stars had heard. The myth of peace was dead. The reckoning had truly begun. We weren't just a threat anymore. We were a cause. It started small. A whisper in the trade alleys of Sornax Station, a merchant guild refusing to sell council-made arms. Then came a blockade runner on the Utari fringe, transmitting coded fragments of our broadcast to passing vessels. And then it spread. Whole colonies went dark from council surveillance. Governors disappeared overnight. Council embassies were set on fire. In some sectors, alien workers began striking, demanding access to their sealed historical records. Protests turned to riots. Riots turned to ambushes. And at the center of it all were humans, never visible, never confirmed, but felt in every crack. Vega Drift could no longer hold the weight. We were getting too loud, too many coming in, too many secrets dying in our walls. So Juno made the call. Decentralize. The network fractured, not in weakness, but in strategy. 17 new hubs scattered across outlawed space, not just human-run anymore, sympathizers, survivors, the betrayed. Each cell was autonomous. Each cell had a task. Hit, bleed, vanish. I took command of Cell Theta. My job? Make the core bleed. The core was the heart of council power. Wealthy worlds draped in gold-plated law, untouched by the chaos beyond. Cities that hovered above oceans, towers that pierced clouds, citizens fed a daily dose of curated peace. They believed the rebellion was distant, abstract. I was going to fix that. We targeted 3 planets, Alzura, Veltrin, and Morthis, all jewels of the core, all complacent, all fed by slave labor in stripped worlds. We didn't use weapons, we used their systems. Juno had developed something she called the Worm, a silent, self-replicating code that infected public data relays. It didn't destroy. It revealed. On Alzura, the Worm hijacked their central holo theater. 1,000 citizens sat expecting a council-approved ballet. They got Delta Nix, they got the domes, they got the screams. Veltrin's education net went next. Overnight, every textbook, every lecture was overwritten with the real history. Our history. The banned footage, the graves, the experiments, the screams. On Morthis, we did worse. We shut down the planetary defense grid for 10 minutes. Nothing happened during those 10 minutes, but it was the fear that stuck. The kind of fear the Council couldn't regulate. We didn't need ships. We didn't need guns. We were inside their dreams now. Back at Vega Drift, now Cell Prime, Juno had her hands full. Sympathizer groups were getting bolder. Some were untrained, sloppy. A few even crossed the line, bombing civilian ports, attacking non-combatants. We weren't saints, but we had a code. Juno enforced it with brutal precision. One group, the Red Maw, started executing council-born children in a refugee camp on Vela 4. We found them. Juno herself led the strike, didn't take prisoners. When it was over, she broadcast her own warning. We are not the Council. We don't become what we fight. She didn't smile afterward, didn't talk, just poured herself a drink and stared at the stars. Some people thought she was cold. They didn't understand. She wasn't cold. She was focused. The Council tried to retaliate. They struck at Sector 9, where we'd built a hidden armory in an abandoned mining lattice, sent 2 cruisers and a support fleet. We were waiting. I'd spent the last 2 weeks working with an Uxari demolitions expert who'd defected after her brother disappeared under Council gene audits. Together we laid enough thermal charges inside the lattice walls to melt a small moon. When the cruisers entered the field, We lured them in with false signals, echoes of human distress. They came in arrogant. They died confused. 2,000 council troops vaporized in a blaze that lit up the night sky. We didn't celebrate. We harvested. Metal, power cores, data from their wreckage. Every piece they sent to kill us, we sent back sharpened. But there was something else now. A shift. Alien species started calling themselves unregistered. A quiet nod to us. Refugees without planets began painting human sigils on their hulls, symbols of rebellion. One child, a Grelth orphan, carved the old Terran Resistance R into her shell plating. Said she saw it in a dream. Said it made her feel brave. Brax cried when he saw that. First and only time I ever saw it. Then came the turning point. Counselor Marek, a high-ranking voice from the inner table, broke. He sent us a message from inside the core, encrypted, urgent. He wasn't a traitor, not fully. He was scared. Said the council was planning something called Vortex Directive. We didn't know what that meant, but we knew the sound of desperation when we heard it. The last time the council created a directive, they burned the Lurasi homeworld to cover up their biotech crimes. 40 million died. No one was ever held accountable. We needed to know what Vortex meant. Juno sent me and Brax into the core. Deep. Suicide deep. We landed on Karen Prime, one of the Council's off-grid research moons. Posing as Council agents escorting a captured, unregistered, we bypassed security with credentials stolen from a dead officer 3 months back. Inside, it was worse than we imagined. Not a lab. A vault, full of stolen DNA, human, alien, hybrid. One vault labeled Emergency Genesis Protocol Vortex. We broke the seal. Inside were embryos, thousands, grown artificially. No parents, no identities, just templates. They weren't trying to kill us anymore. They were trying to replace us, rebuild their version of humanity. Sterile, controlled, loyal. A perfect species without the rage, the rebellion, the memory. Juno's voice came through the comm, sharp. "Burn it!" I looked at Brax. He didn't blink. We laid charges, every wall, every cryo-tube, and when we left we didn't look back. The explosion echoed through every system. The Council denied it. But survivors talked. Scientists, assistants, guards. They told stories of ghost-born humans setting fire to their future, of outlaws laughing as the flames rose. The Council couldn't stop it anymore. The silence had collapsed. And in its place, the stars burned with a new name. Not human, not outlaw. Free! The sky wasn't dark anymore. It was on fire. From the outer rings to the velvet black edges of the core, rebellion had erupted like a storm with 1,000 heads. Vegadrift was no longer a secret. It was a legend. Every outlaw cell, every suppressed colony, every child who grew up hearing whispers of Earth's final breath, they all knew its name. And they all knew ours. We weren't the hunted anymore. We were the hunters. The destruction of the Vortex facility broke something in the Council. Not structurally, not even militarily. It broke their illusion. For centuries they'd operated under the guise of peace, an elegant machine built on soft genocide and polished lies. They didn't conquer planets, they reorganized. They didn't kill civilians, they optimized populations. But when that moon burned, when the embryos screamed in fire and the echoes leaked into the neural network, they couldn't hide behind language anymore. The galaxy saw what they were. And worse for them, it saw what we'd become. The war began not with fleets, but with choices. A traitor from the Syrian race, once devout Council allies, refused to deliver Council supplies to the Aetheris front. His crew agreed. The entire convoy vanished into unregistered space. A Valdori general publicly defected, bringing half her army with her. She made no speeches, just broadcast the image of a Delta Nix grave and said, "We don't follow monsters." A farming colony on Zephyrin 3 revolted with mining tools and hydrocutters. No tactics, no strategy. But they held for 12 days, enough for Cell Iota to slip in with weapons and data caches. That colony became a fortress. We didn't win territory, we made monuments. Juno called a summit, not in secret, not hidden. She called it on the bridge of the Harbinger, our new flagship. A repurposed Council dreadnought stolen during a data cripple op 2 months earlier. It was 20 clicks long, powered by rage and rebuilt by ghosts. We invited the heads of 25 rebel factions. Human, non-human, half-human. No ranks, no chairs, just a round chamber with a single question hanging in the stale, recycled air. "What now?" Brax said. "We burn every system that wore a Council crest." A former Council biologist, now leading Cell Gamma, countered. "Then we become them." Juno didn't speak until the room had chewed itself hoarse. Then she stepped forward. "No empires," she said. "No flags. No peace treaties signed in blood. We fight, we finish, then we vanish again." "And the Council?" someone asked. She looked out the viewport at the stars. "We erase them, not just from power, from history, from memory, from every system they corrupted. And after that?" She smiled. "Then we let the galaxy breathe without a boot on its throat." I wasn't made for politics. I stayed in the dark, running ops. Our latest mission was called Starhook. The target was a core comms node orbiting Calvec 7, one of the 4 remaining systems the Council used to coordinate fleet movement. Destroying it would blind their forward units and leave their flank exposed for a full 72 hours. A window that wide? We hadn't seen that since the Council's fracture. I took 6 commandos, 3 humans, 2 Valkyrie, 1 CERN-Tech hybrid whose name wasn't pronounceable, but whose loyalty was forged in fire. We launched from a shadow gate hidden in a gas cluster. Masked signals, cold engines. The Council wasn't expecting us, but they had automated defenses. Anti-ship mines, proximity torpedoes, hunter drones. Halfway through the drift approach, we lost contact with Rix. Valdari sniper, best I'd ever seen. His scream came through a second before the hull decompression warning lit up. We didn't stop. We didn't mourn. We couldn't. Inside the node, we planted spike relays, hijacked the central processor, redirected the orbital laser grid into its own energy source. Boom. The whole thing exploded like a dying star, taking our exfil craft with it. We lost another in the blast, crawled out on emergency suits, beaconed for pickup, oxygen running low. An old mining vessel flagged us down. Pilot was human. 1 arm, no eye. He said, "You the ghosts?" I nodded. He grinned. "Good. Been waiting for you." The Council struck back. Not with fleets this time. With weapons of legacy. They detonated a neutron bomb on Farlon's Reach. One of our earliest liberated outposts. 90,000 dead. Mostly farmers and children. No military presence. The message was clear. They were out of finesse. They wanted blood, and we gave it to them. The Harbinger launched a direct assault on Zenith Prime, a central Council hub long thought impenetrable. We coordinated with 5 cells, hacked their orbital codes, and rammed the ship straight through their capital's defense grid. It took 22 minutes to level the tower that issued the Vortex orders. It took 2 hours to clean the blood from the decks. I stood on the ruins with Juno after it was done. The sky above Zenith was orange with smoke and judgment. "This isn't war anymore," I said. She nodded. "It's surgery." But something was coming. Something bigger than a directive, bigger than a fleet. The Council was losing control, and they knew it. And like any dying beast, they were preparing to thrash. Solace, the Valdari defector, intercepted fragments from deep within Council archives. Shattered logs, corrupted files, names. One kept appearing, Project NOX, a final failsafe, a doomsday trigger buried deep in core protocols. Not much was known. Only that it had never been activated, because to activate it meant accepting the Council was dying. We had a choice. Hit the project before it triggered, or hit the core directly and force their hand. Brax wanted the core. Clean sweep, guillotine their gods and let the pieces fall. Juno was quiet. I looked at her across the war table, battle-worn, eyes sunken, jaw set. Either way, I said, we lose something. Yeah, she said, but only one path gives us the chance to rebuild. I nodded. Then we break their crown. The core was waiting, not with fire, with silence. No fleets in orbit, no defenses up, not even beacons. It was too easy, which meant it was a trap. And we walked in anyway. Because the only thing more dangerous than a wounded human is one with nothing left to fear. The core was too quiet. That silence, the kind you only hear just before an ambush, or right after a bomb has gone off and the dust hasn't settled. That silence where your own heartbeat sounds like a drumbeat of doom. We breached the atmosphere of Viralon Prime, the heart of Council Command, expecting resistance. There was none. The cities still glowed under glass domes. Skyscrapers still pierced the clouds. Transport still moved along rails and flight lanes. But the streets? Empty. No soldiers, no civilians, no sound, just ghosts. Brax leaned over the command rail of the Harbinger, his voice a low growl. This isn't surrender, this is bait. Juno nodded. They want us here. She wasn't wrong. We were already too far in to turn back. So we landed. The council hall was untouched. Marble pillars, gold-leafed arches, that same damn crest carved into every wall, the emblem of peace forged in hypocrisy. Inside we found the high chamber, and we found them, the last counselors, 10 of them, old, thin, eyes sunken like they hadn't slept in weeks. They weren't scared. They were waiting. One of them, Counselor Arlen, stood when we entered. He was the one from the Vortex files, the architect of the directive, the man who authorized the human erasure policies across 3 star systems. He raised his hand, slow and deliberate. We expected you. Brax cocked his rifle. Shoot him, I said. Brax hesitated. Just like that? Juno didn't. Her pistol barked once. Arlen dropped like dead weight. Skull cracked open against the marble. The others didn't even flinch. Instead, one of them, Vera Thal, stepped forward. A woman with skin like pale sand and a voice so calm it crawled up your spine. You came for blood, she said. No, Juno replied. We came for truth. Thal turned, pressed her hand to a panel behind the throne. A wall split open. Behind it was a vault. And in the vault, Project NOX. We thought it was a weapon. It wasn't. It was a message, a confession, a record of the Council's founding, unfiltered, videos, audio logs, biological samples, declassified footage. It showed everything. How the Council was built, not to preserve peace, but to erase threats. How the early species, those in power, manipulated evolution. How they sterilized species that resisted economic subjugation. How humans, upon entering the galactic stage, were immediately tagged as a threat due to their unpredictable emotional spectrum, their violence, and their refusal to be assimilated. The first contact report from Earth wasn't a diplomatic exchange. It was a diagnosis. Unstable, adaptable, rebellious, dangerous, extermination may become necessary. They didn't try to teach us. They tried to tame us. And when that failed, they buried us. Juno stood frozen, her face blank. I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore. This was about a lie so old it had become law. Brax smashed a console with his rifle butt. We already knew this. What's the damn point? Counselor Thal sat down. The point, Commander, is that you've won. I frowned. Then why show us this? She looked tired. Because we knew it would end this way. You think you're destroying us, but all you're doing is completing the cycle. Juno stepped forward. What cycle? Thal whispered. All power consumes itself. Eventually, those who seek justice will become tyrants, and the stars will forget who fired first. It was her final trick. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to poison us, to make us doubt our own fire. We left the chamber in silence. Thal and the rest stayed behind. We didn't kill them. We didn't need to. They died in that room the moment the doors closed. Their empire had already fallen. They just hadn't accepted it. Back aboard the Harbinger, we faced the final decision. Brax wanted to wipe every core planet clean, fire and ash. They watched us burn, he growled. Now we return the favor. Others agreed. Some hesitated. Juno stood at the center, silent. Then she turned to me. What do you think? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the room. At humans with prosthetic limbs and branded numbers from council camps. At alien allies who lost families to sterilization policies. At children who wore our crest not as rebels, but as hope. And I remembered Earth. I remembered the blue sky before it turned red, the oceans before they boiled, the cities before they fell. I remembered what was taken from us, and I remembered what we became. Fire, I said, won't make them remember. It'll only make them fear. I looked at Juno. And fear. It's what got us here in the first place. She nodded slowly and made her decision. We didn't burn the core. We opened it. We broadcast the truth across every star system, uncut, uncensored, every atrocity, every erased species, every genocide filed under policy. We tore the veil off their gods, and we didn't ask the galaxy to forgive us. We asked it to choose. The result? Chaos. Uprisings everywhere. Council flags torn down, burned, replaced by symbols of truth, some human, some alien, some entirely new. The core fractured. Some systems descended into civil war. Others found new leaders. Not all chose peace. Not all chose mercy. But all chose freedom. And in that, we won. Juno stepped down a month later, said her war was over. She disappeared into the ghost sectors, like smoke after a blaze. Brax stayed. Built what he called the Ash Fleet, a mobile unit tasked with hunting down the worst of the old council's monsters who slipped through the cracks. Me? I returned to Vega Drift. It's different now, no longer hidden, no longer hunted. It's a beacon, a place where no flag flies, where the